Disc golf manufacturing has been the backbone of the sport we love. Ever since the start of the sport, the way it has grown has been through these companies that push it. This is my way of telling the history of the sport through the lens of manufacturers. We will only be looking at disc golf discs that are PDGA approved, starting with the first company to ever manufacture a disc and ending with the last company. The PDGA approval list has them under the section of manufacturer/distributor. Now some companies use others to make their discs, then they sell them under their own company banner. We will be focusing on each company by themselves, not specifically who makes the discs. There's so many disc manufacturers out there, so we can't cover them all, just focusing on the major disc golf companies. The first disc from every manufacturer, here we go. The beginnings of disc golf get a bit dicey. Since the sport has come so far, the early years were very similar. The Disc Golf Association, aka DGA, began in 1976 by Ed Hendricks. 2 years later, the first disc came out, the Night Flyer. This was the first disc that was ever specifically made for disc golf. Other Whammo discs had been PDGA approved, but they were just flying discs, not specifically towards disc golf. The Night Flyer was made for the new Steady Ed night courses. Only around 1,000 were made, then an issue occurred with the trademark name of the Night Flyer. So they became no more. The Midnight Flyer would take its place, but the Night Flyer will be remembered as the first disc specifically made for disc golf. Discraft started in London, Ontario, then moved to Michigan, where we now know them as a leader in disc sports. They first started with the Sky Pro, which was PDGA approved, but is an all-around disc sport disc. They had a couple other discs that were used in disc golf, but it wasn't until 1983 that they changed the game. The history of the game, as I said, is dicey. All credit for an invention goes to the next company we will talk about, but technically the Phantom from Discraft was the first disc to have this innovation. At least it was the first to be PDGA approved. January 1st, 1983, the disc Phantom came out from Discraft. We now know what Discraft has become, but this is where it started. A beveled edge disc, the difference between every disc golf specific disc and the ones we play catch with. The beveled edge, as I have mentioned before, goes to being invented by Dave Dunapis of Innovate Discs. The beveled edge, a sharp wedge compared to other discs that came out before it with the blunt edge. This is what every disc golf disc these days now has. The Eagle, old version, was PDGA approved 3 months after the Phantom from Discraft was. They both had beveled edges. Maybe one of you guys can tell me the difference. Anyways, the Eagle from Innova was their first disc they ever came out with. The 1983 Innovation Company popped up onto the board for disc golf, a disc that has been changed since the years, but the name remains the same. Innova wouldn't stop there with innovating. They would create an offspring company called Millennium Discs, a company formed to focus on manufacturing premium plastic discs. Their first disc was the Tachyon LF in May of 1995. Both companies would still be popping out discs today, but by far, Innova would be a leader in disc golf sports. In the 80s and 90s, there was the trifecta of disc golf sports. 2 companies still stand and produce to this day. Lightning Discs, on the other hand, is not a leader in sports. In 1984, the P-38 Lightning came out, named after an innovative plane during World War II. The company would thrive early on, but would not continue against Innova and Discraft. They came out with more discs than this, but it was the P-38 that got them off the runway. The next big company to join disc golf was Gateway. Now they might not be considered what Innova and Discraft are now, but they're still a decent manufacturer in the disc golf scene. The 844 Sabre was the first disc they ever came out with. A year later they made some slight changes to the disc, now a new approved disc just simply called the Sabre. The disc golf company with maybe one of the most niche fans. Anytime I run into somebody who has Gateway, they're usually pretty adamant about how good the discs are, so I had to make sure I had Gateway included on this list. Latitude 64, our first European manufacturer that we get to check out today. In 2006, they popped onto the disc golf scene with 3 molds right off the bat. The Medius, the Sinus AP, and the Sinus SP. Now all 3 molds were approved in the same day, as we'll be counting them all as their first discs. The Swedish company has grown and grown. Now most of you know it as being a part of Trilogy, with a couple companies we have yet to look at. I've already made a video about the specifics of one of their first discs, the Sinus, so make sure to go check that out in the top right corner. We're staying international for the next company. Many may not have heard of these discs, but I learned about this company a couple years ago. Come to find out, they've been around since 2006 as well. RPM Discs first launched with 4 molds, but we'll just count one of their more recognizable molds as their first. The Kiwi, from the New Zealand-based disc golf company, may be one of their best discs. The driver has been retooled since, but it's a staple in the RPM lineup all the way back in 2006. I was shocked that Discmania was only first started in 2006. For some reason, I think of them as being a big company that's been around for a while, but that's just not true. Their first disc, the MD1, was approved November 14th, 2006. They had an up and down road as a company in regards to who was doing their manufacturing, but it seems more recently they have put it all together. Discmania may have had a slow start when it comes to getting molds out, but the MD1 has pretty much stood the test of time. A fun company to throw, one of the biggest European based as well. I really like the 15-year edition of the MD1, one of the cooler anniversary stamps by a company. The Ion, first dropped by a brand new Michigan-based company, with some technology we've yet to see. The Overmold, branded by MVP discs, this became their staple putter, with their staple technology. Throughout the whole MVP lineup, you have discs of all kinds with the Overmold technology. Now wanting to stray from the basis of what the company was made of, MVP made some decisions to start more companies alongside MVP. Axiom first dropped in 2014 with discs that had the Overmold technology alongside some flashy colors and different discs than in the MVP lineup. Their first two discs they came out with were the Alias, and now the maybe more famous disc, the Envy. Streamlined discs came next in 2017, they dropped the Pilot. They provided single mold discs unlike the overmold technology from Axiom and MVP. MVP, a company of companies making all sorts of different stuff. The next installment of the Trilogy brand, Westside Discs, started up in 2009 with the Northman. My first disc set I ever bought was Westside, so they'll always have a special place for me. The Northman may have been their first driver, but it's really been the disc molds of late that have made the company popular. Also joining the Trilogy brand helps. Finally, we can talk about what exactly is going on with Trilogy. The Dynamic Disc Golf Company started in 2012. They had 4 disc molds drop on the same day. The Escape, the Trespass, and the Judge were among these 4 discs. They're still leading the company forward 10 years after dropping. The Trilogy brand is Dynamic, Latitude 64, and Westside combined. Most of you probably know this, but for those who don't, that's what makes up Trilogy. First Latitude, then Westside, then finally Dynamic Disc came out. Latitude makes Westside Discs in Sweden as the European basis for Trilogy, then Dynamic is in the States, creating so many molds, it's crazy. The Escape and the Judge may have been their first discs, but they're still prominent in the disc golf scene. The D1, 2, 3, and 4 were all released by Prodigy on the same day. The staple of their drivers, the Prodigy lineup was off to a solid start. They have come out with quite a few molds since then, but these discs were the staple of their disc golf brand. Unlike a lot of other companies where you see them start with putters or mid-ranges, the Prodigy brand came right out of the gate with the distance drivers. 2013 was a busy year for Prodigy, dropping some 18 molds. Some have been retooled since, but this crazy 2013 year was what kickstarted the Prodigy mayhem. The distance driver lineup they first came out with will be remembered as the start to something different. A company that has way more traction as of late, Castoplast actually had a really early start in the disc golf scene. The Rask, the old version, came out in 2013. It only seems like recently that the Castoplast brand has been one of the most popular brands, but for a while it was really hard to get a hold of any of their discs. A year later, the Rask was retooled. For those who don't know it, it is one of the most unique discs out on the market. The underlying double rim makes for a very different feeling distance driver. Time for some quick-fire first discs from some of the smaller new disc golf brands. In the late 2010s and early 2020s, new companies were popping up out of nowhere. The first of these was Mint Discs with the Alpha in 2017. They haven't been around long enough to really get their foot in the door, but they are on their way. Next was Infinite Discs, the online retailer where you can pretty much get any kind of disc. They started making their own discs in 2018 with the Exodus. Lone Star Discs would come next during the pandemic in 2020. They came out with 2 approved discs, the Dillard Mid-Range aka MIDI, and also the Penny Putter. Finally, our last company we'll look at is Clash Discs. The Mint, the Mango, and the Berry were all dropped on the same day on November 22nd, 2021. The latest company that is still considered small but growing day by day. These last few companies have all been hidden under the limelight of the big brands like Discraft, Innova, and Trilogy, but they're growing each and every day, slowly pushing the envelope and waiting to be one, if not the next biggest company. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe. Check out my channel for more content just like this. Let me know down in the comments which of these discs are your favorite, or if I left out any of your favorite manufacturers. Alright, we'll see you next time. Cheers.